Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now this is one that we sort of covered in 7th edition, and it was kind of like sort of real life logistics of the Imperial Guard. This one's going to be a bit more specific. It's more about sort of timings in the Imperial Guard. So what I mean by that is there's a big issue that a lot of Guard players are facing, especially newer ones, people which have converted to the Guard after they've seen how good we are at the moment. And a big issue they're facing is this is the first time that these players are using these large formations. Most of the time, they're just used to plopping down between 10 and sort of 50 models at most. Maybe if they're like some tactical marines, they're like, in rhinos, stuff like that. That's what they're used to using. And generally their armies contain 50 models or less. That's a big selling point for a lot of armies. Think of Death Watch and the Grey Knights. The whole point of them is small model count armies. Think of Eldar players, who just used to like running sort of 20 models with, well, maybe 30, with 20 of them being scatter bikes and the rest being things like Wraith Knights and Wave Serpents. Generally speaking, these players are coming from armies that at most would field 50 guys, at most. And now they're coming to an army where 50 guys is like, if we want to, could be one of our squads. And most of the time, I would say most Guard players out there that like to play pretty competitively like to run 100 bodies. What did I always say in 7th edition, guys? And I hope a lot of you listened to me, which was you get your 100 Guardsmen, whether that's conscripts or infantry, you get your 100 Guardsmen and you build a list from there. For most people, this is just an insane concept, one that they're just not familiar with. 100 guys and then you still get other shit? Crazy. But the problem I've seen with a lot of people and a lot of complaints that I've seen bouncing around the internet is it's really boring playing against Imperial Guard, and it's really difficult to use them in a tournament because their turns take so long. And it's like, well, this is true, but it's mostly only affecting the newer players. I have some top tips, ones that I've used in 8th edition already, in my first sort of 20 games, for how to make sure that you can always finish your games in 2.5 hours. And that's including deployment times. Okay, I don't know what the exact number is. I'm just going to throw them out there when they come from my head. But, I've got some tips for you. Number one is, there is a sort of plateau of infantry when it comes to usefulness and number of infantry. I mentioned in 7th edition where when you're running pure infantry, which I used to do in 7th edition, which is you reach about 200 guys and then you start flattening off with how useful the rest of the infantry becomes. And you get about 250 guys and then it just flatlines. And any more that you take over 250, it kind of, it's just not as good. They're not adding anything to your army. You're just adding numbers, but you're not adding any sort of help to your army. I would say that's really important as well in 8th edition. The best army that I have come up with for 8th edition was my perfectly balanced mix of tanks, infantry and conscript list. That was my perfect list. That is the one that I've used in 7 games so far, undefeated. Okay, and that was where I took 3 Leman Russes, this is at 2,000 points, 3 Leman Russes, 3 Hellhounds, 3 squads of conscripts, 3 squads of infantry, and then a few mortars and officers and Harker, basically. Nice balance. You've got 6 tanks in there, you've got about 150 infantry in there, roughly. Perfect balance. Mwah! Perfect. So that's the key. Number one, perfect balance. The reason why it's important you have this is because what you've got to understand is you'll be able to do, your infantry will take a long time to roll and to do all the dice, especially now they're putting 4 shots out each. So it's really important to have that balance. Because it might, in theory, maybe the most effective army at 2,000 points is 500 conscripts backed up by leaders. Maybe it is. But are you ever going to finish a tournament game? Are you ever going to get past turn 3? And maybe you didn't lose all that much, but I've known plenty of battles in every edition of 40k where if a game was going to be over by turn 3, it normally favoured your opponent rather than favouring the Guard. Guard need those 5 turns to grind your opponents down. You need them. And then you can use turn 4 and 5 to actually get to the objectives. That's how it's always been. That's how it'll always be for guard. Well, for foot, you know, for like foot and tank guard. For mixed guard. So, that's number one. Make sure for timings you're keeping your infantry, you know, 100 to 150 is fine. If you really want, go up to 200, but then you're going to notice it's going to start eating into your time. I would say for tournament play, for competitive play, 150 guys, maybe 180 is perfect. Between 150 to 200. No, 100 to 150, really. With 180 being like the max I'd go for now. And that's only for timings. If you're playing narrative games or whatever, that's fine. But what I'm saying is we're talking about timings here. So that's number one. Number two, plan the whole game in your head. That sounds crazy. Like, how do you know there's going to be like different dice rolls and different outcomes? How are you going to plan the whole game in your head? Look, right. It's pretty easy to plan a whole game in your head. But it kind of starts at the list building stage. I think the number one reason why my rule of 3 list, the one that I used at the 1500 point tournament, I think the reason it was so effective is because I knew what I was going to do. I knew what my list could do. I knew all the missions were objective based. There was like 1 kill points mission, which really doesn't require any thinking. You just shoot a unit until it dies. But 4 out of 5 missions were objective based. And my rule of 3 list worked by saying, I've got 3 formations here, 30 conscripts, 20 infantry and a tank. Each one of these is going to act as like a separate fire base. And I was just like, right, this is where I am now in my deployment zone. This is where the objectives are. I have 5 turns to get there. And all I'm going to do is spend 5 turns getting to those objectives. That's all I'm going to do. Now, yeah, maybe I need to, there's like, what about different targets you're going to shoot, blah, blah, blah. You kind of should already know which targets you're going to shoot. Your infantry should be shooting at their infantry. Your conscripts should be shooting at their infantry. Your tanks should be shooting at their big motherfuckers. And your infantry squads should be chipping off the last wounds from whichever target the other guys fail to damage. For example, orc mob in front of you. Fire the conscripts at it. They kill about half. Kind of need, you want to kill about half. Maybe they only kill like 10 out of 30. You're like, kind of need to kill more than that. I don't know. I'll throw an infantry squad in to support them. Oh yeah, infantry squad's firepower got what I needed to do. On the other side, Liam's battle tank with heavy bolters, lascannons, battle cannon. Right, that shoots at a fucking Carnifex, for example. Oh, didn't kill the Carnifex? That's kind of disappointing. It's alright, I've got the second infantry squad, which I'm going to use to finish it off. You don't really, that's the only decisions you really need to make. You should be able to plan out, I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go there. For example, turn 1, I'm going to move forward, shoot, turn 2, move forward, shoot, turn 3, on the objectives, turn 4 and 5, hold and counterattack. You should be able to plan that. Target prioritization should pretty much be that unit's closest to the objective, kill that unit. Now obviously these are blanket rules and they don't always apply to a certain situation. What if your opponent is rolling at one flank? Then yeah, you've got to, support and reinforce that flank. Maybe. Or maybe you've got to, acceptable losses. If I lose that third of my army, I don't care. Because the other 2/3 will complete their mission objectives and I win the game. Easy peasy. Maybe. That's the only time when tricky decisions need to be made. But even then, you should have you should be able to make that snap judgment. That's what you're going to have to be able to do, make the snap judgment. So number 1 rule is limit the amount of infantry you're taking, but don't take too few. If you take less than 100 infantry, you're fucked. You want to be taking about 150 infantry. Rule number 2, pre-plan nearly everything. You should be able to, at the beginning of the game, say, I'm going to be here, and I want to end up there. Everything in between should be snap decisions. Like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Occasionally, you should have to spend about 10-15 seconds thinking about something. No longer than that. Okay? Third thing that I want to say, how to save time, is predict what your opponent's going to do. Okay? Most competitive players, you will be able to predict what they're going to do. based on their deployment. Most competitive players, based on their sort of flowing of the game. You know, for example, number one, based on what army they play, you should be able to predict what they're going to do. For example, a Orc or Tyranid army is going to be coming towards you. You know they're going to be coming towards you. You can use that to predict what your opponent's going to do. And if you know if you predict what your opponent's going to do, you can then spend time, you know, quickly predict. You can then spend time, how to put this, proactively countering what he's not already done yet. So, if you know an Orc mob is gonna dad jump, you know, if you see your opponent's list and he's got like 30, you know, like 120 boys and like a couple of weird boys and some other shit, you know he's taken weird boys. He is going to dad jump. He is going to get close to me. I can pre-counter that in the deployment phase, have a conscript screen set up, have an infantry screen set up. You've predicted what he's going to do. And if he's a competitive player, and he's an Orc player, he's going to use dad jump. And so you know, well, I'm going to have to sacrifice these 30 conscripts, but then I'm going to be able to delete this mob of Orcs. You see? You've already, before he's even done that dad jump, you've predicted what he's going to do. Now, some of you might say, what if he does something completely unexpected? What if he doesn't dad jump and he just runs his Orcs across the field? Well, if he does that, you've got a turkey shoot on your hands, because dad jump is an amazing power, and if he doesn't use it, then he's made a suboptimal move. And by making that suboptimal move, you will have more time to shoot at him. That's an example. Another example, Tau. You look at the Tau list. You're like, okay, he's got some Fire Warriors. He's got some, he's got like a Riptide, he's got a Storm Surge. You know what he's going to be firing his different weapons at. You know his Fire Warriors are going to be targeting your infantry. You know his big things are probably going to be targeting your tanks. You know he's going to do that. You can, by already knowing what your opponent's going to damage and what he's going to hurt, you can already predict next turn what your unit strength is going to be. For example, he shoots a Riptide or a Storm Surge, something big, at one of your Lehman Russes. You know he's going to do that. Okay, before he's even rolled the dice, you can work out in your head, okay, roughly, he's probably going to knock it down at least one effectiveness bracket. It's probably going to be hitting on 4s instead of 3s. I assume we took tank commanders, by the way, guys, because tank commanders are better than regular Lehman Russes. Anyway, back on topic. You know he's going to do some damage to your Lehman Russ. More than likely, he's going to knock it down one effectiveness bracket, so it's only hitting on 4s. Maybe he might knock it down 2, so it's only hitting on 5s. Maybe. If that's the case, you already know that vehicle, its effectiveness has dropped down. On the plus side, you're like, okay, he's going to shoot his Fire Warriors more than likely, and his burst cancel the shit, and my infantry. I know my infantry is probably going to take about 10 to 15 casualties. So now, I know with that infantry squad, that conscript blob, its job is going to become fucking bait. It's going to run forward, get in his face, and force him to keep attacking it, whilst my infantry squad sit back and shoot. You can do that in the deployment phase. You can do that in the deployment phase. And you've already saved time because you're not having to react to what he's done. You're proactively countering him. Number one mistake that so many players make is they watch their opponent's turn like a zombie. Oh, he's done that now. Oh, okay. Oh, that was interesting. That's bad. If you've done that, it's going to cost you a lot of time. You should be watching your opponent like a hawk, watching what he does, every move that he makes. And in your head, whilst his turn is happening, you're like, okay, he's done that. I predict he's going to do that. He's done that. I predict he's going to do that. He's moved his Fire Warriors forward. He's going for that objective. He's deep flew down a couple of Tau commands with burst cannons. He wants to shred that infantry on that flank. Oh, he's deep striked his melter gun ones, or fusion blast ones on the other side. He's going after my tanks over there. You know, and you can be like, right, okay, that means my tanks are going to have to deal with the battlesuits over here, and my infantry are going to have to get in amongst his battlesuits over there. You know, pardon me, guys. I still got a bit of a cough. What I'm saying is, you never ever waste your opponent's turn. Half of your planning should be done in your opponent's turn. Only other thing I can say, guys, is saving tabs. That's like my three sort of, you know, that's say my top 3 tips. Build your list effectively, so you're not having to spend loads of time moving big blocks of infantry around. You want to have some infantry, you want to have some heavy hitters. Predict what your opponent's going to do at the beginning of the game, and plan what you're going to be doing, and then use your opponent's turn against them. Use your opponent's turn to plan further. They're my top 3 tips. The last tip is more, that's sort of my strategic tips. What I'll do is I'm going to split this video down to 2, and that's my strategic tips, and then we'll do a second video on like logistical tips, how you can make it so you're moving your guys around the battlefield quicker. Okay, so that's like strategic tips, and then the next one we're going to have is going to be practical logistical tips, okay, for how to move fast in 8th edition and how to make sure you get to the end of turn 5 every time. Okay, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Tell me what you think, and of course I'll see you guys next time.